Let's discuss normal pregnancy. So other times that we normally use fertilization, pregnation, or fecundation. And fertilization is basically the union of the ovum and the spermatozoa, and it must occur fairly quickly after the release of the ovum because it usually occurs in the outer third of the fallopian tube. And after fertilization, the ova passes through the fallopian tube and reaches the uterus 3 to 4 days later. So the division takes place, and the fertilized ovum divides into two cells, like as you can see in the diagram, and then into 4, then 8, 16, and soon it becomes a cluster of cells known as morula. Next, fluid-filled cavity is formed as a blastocell, and it appears in the morula, which now becomes known as the blastocyst. So after the outside of the blastocyst um, had been transformed, as around the outside of the blastocyst there is a single layer of cell known as the trophoblast, and the remaining cells are clumped together as you can see in the diagram, forming the inner cell mass. The trophoblast would then form the placenta and the chorion, while the inner cell mass becomes the fetus, the umbilical cord and the amnion. An embedding of the blastocyst is normally completed after the 11th day after ovulation and fully embedded in the endometrium. The cydia is the name given to the endometrium during pregnancy, and three layers are found in the deciduea: the basal layer, the functional layer, and the compact layer. The basal layer lies immediately above the myometrium, and the functional layer consists of tortuous glands which are rich in secretions. The compact layer basically forms the surface of the deciduea and is composed of closely packed stroma cells and the neck of the glands. The trophoblast differentiates into two layers: the syncytiotrophoblast and the cytotrophoblast. So the outer layer is the syncytiotrophoblast or the syncytium, and the inner cytotrophoblast. Two, and below this is a layer of the mesoderm or primitive mesenchyme. The syncytiotrophoblast is composed of nucleated protoplasm, which is capable of breaking down tissue, as in the process of embedding. The cytotrophoblast is a well-defined single layer of cells which produces a hormone known as the human chorionic gonadotrophin, the HCG. So basically, the inner cell mass um, has it differentiates into three layers. So while the trophoblast is developing into the placenta, which will nourish the fetus, the inner cell mass is also forming the fetus itself. The cells differentiate into three layers, as I said earlier, each of which will form particular parts of the fetus. We have the ectoderm, the mesoderm, and the endoderm. So the ectoderm mainly forms the skin and the nervous system, and the mesoderm forms the bones, the muscles, and also the heart and blood vessels, including those which are in the placenta. Always remember that the endoderm forms mucous membranes and glands, and the three layers together are known as the embryonic plate. Okay, so now let's jump to the functions of the placenta. Remember what I said um, about the placenta. Okay, so placenta has several functions, but some of the functions are for respiratory purposes, nutrition, storage, and excretion. So respiration, as pulmonary exchange of gases does not take place in the uterus, the fetus must still obtain oxygen and excrete carbon dioxide through the placenta. Nutrition, the food for the fetus derives um, is derived from the mother's diet, and this diet that has already been broken down reaches the placental site. So the placenta is able to select those substances that are required by the fetus. even depleting the mother's own supply in some instances. So for the storage, the placenta is able to metabolize glucose and can also store it in the form of glycogen and reconvert it back to glucose as required. And the placenta stores iron and also fat-soluble vitamins. Excretion, the main substance excreted from the fetus is carbon dioxide and bilirubin. The placenta also has a protective function. So it provides a limited barrier to infection with the exception of treponema of syphilis, and few bacteria can also penetrate. Viruses, however, can cross freely and may cause congenital abnormalities, as in the case of Rubella virus and HIV virus. So endocrine has an endocrine function too. The human chorionic gonadotropin is produced by the cytotrophoblastic layer of the chorionic villi, and as the activity of the corpus luteum declines, the placenta takes over the production of estrogen, which are secreted in large amounts throughout pregnancy. The human placental lactogen has a role in glucose metabolism in pregnancy too. Okay, so for the amnion, the amniotic sac basically consists of a double membrane, the chorion and the amnion, the outer layer and the inner layer. The outer layer adheres to the uterine wall, that's the chorion. The inner layer of the amniotic sac contains the amniotic fluid, and it covers the fetal surface of the placenta, and what that's what gives the placenta its typical shiny surface. So the amniotic fluid basically protects the fetus from any infection, and the amniotic fluid is usually clear, pale straw in color. It's secreted by the amnion, and fetal urine also contributes to the volume from the 10th week of gestation onwards. Total amount of amniotic fluid is about 1 liter and diminishes to 300 mils at 38 weeks of gestation. So always remember, um, 300 mils, 300 mils or less leads to oligohydramnios. So if the total amount exceeds 1500 mils, that condition is known as polyhydramnios, and if it is less than 300 mils, that's known as oligohydramnios. And it's basically the amniotic fluid has 99% water, and the remaining 1% is made up of dissolved organic matter, um, including substances and waste products. The basic functions of the amniotic fluid is to allow for free movement of the fetus, protect the fetus from injury, it maintains a constant temperature for the fetus, and also during labor it protects the placenta, the umbilical cord, from the pressure of uterine contraction, and aids in effacement of the cervix and dilatation of the uterine os. The umbilical cord of Funes extends from the fetus to the placenta and transmits the umbilical blood vessels. It has 2 arteries and 1 vein, and these are enclosed and protected by Watten's jelly, a gelatinous substance that's from the mesoderm, and the whole cord is covered in a layer of amnion, which continues with the covering of the placenta. The length of the average cord is about 50 centimeters, and the cord is considered to be short if it measures less than 40 centimeters.